Come to me with empty hands and an open heart, ready to receive abundant blessings. I know the depth and breadth of your neediness. Your life path has been difficult, draining you of strength. Come to me for nurture. Let me fill you up with my presence. I in you, and you in me. My power flows most freely into weak ones, aware of their need for me. Faltering steps of dependence are not lack of faith. They are linked to my presence. So may that be a blessing to you as well. Happy New Year, everyone. Hope it's a happy New Year. Hope it's starting out happy. We've had prayer requests for families that are struggling with health issues and even death in the family. So there's always hard times. So be praying one for another. Praying that even in the midst of the hard times, as this thought for the day said, that we will call upon the Lord. Come to me with empty hands and an open heart, saying, Lord, I need you. I need you today. So I was talking to, can I say it? Randy, I don't know, can I say your name? I was talking to somebody just recently, and they were saying, last year's been a hard year. I hope this new year is better. And I told him I saw another individual who posted about hard times in 25, and I think, I forget if it was Christmas or whatever, the water goes out. And so they're messing around with water. And his comment also was, I hope 2026 is an easier year. And we keep hoping, right? And we hope there's good times in 2026 for all of us, for all of our loved ones. And in spite of the difficulties that will come our way in 2026, we hope we keep our eyes on the Lord, right? What was a song? I wrote down a couple phrases from the songs. That by your grace I have hope, and by your grace I've been set free. Not a step I'm going to take that you're not with me. And so may that be true for you in 2026 and even in the years to come. We hope that you have had a good time with your family and friends as you've ended 2025 and as you start 2026, that through it all, you might see the Lord working in your life, working through your life, working in the life of your family and friends. We've been talking about the idea of following Paul, following Christ, and following Paul in his instruction, in his compassion, the manner of his life and the purpose of his life, his motive for living, and then the idea of Jesus Christ, following Jesus Christ and his motive for living, the purpose of his living, the compassion that was manifested when he was on this earth, and then the instruction. And we've mentioned in the past the idea that when you start talking about following Christ, it's a subject that is so vast, it's impossible to actually cover it all. And yet we try to bring out a few points, at least in regards to that. And today I want to bring out the idea of Christ's instruction connected with the idea of horizontal truth and vertical truth. And we're basically just going to deal with horizontal truth today. But I'm going to just mention a couple things in terms of vertical truth. We have this idea that Jesus Christ, when he left earth, he told his disciples to teach all nations whatever I have commanded you. And I'm going to suggest that that's impossible to do, for us to do. Because some of the things that Jesus Christ commanded the disciples and the apostles to do, we just can't do. Some of the things he commanded the people to do, we just cannot do. And you could maybe say, well, we can't be technical and we just have to be general. We can follow it in a general way. And maybe you can word that in such a way that it would be true. But technically, we cannot follow everything that Jesus Christ has told us to do. Told the disciples, the apostles, and the people at that time. So I'm just going to whet your appetite here. Luke chapter 22, we're not going to look there. In verse 36, he told his disciples before he was crucified, if you have an extra garment, you better sell your garment and buy a sword. Now, I tell you, all the time I was in Bible school, I never had any teacher tell me to go out and buy a sword. And I never had any teacher tell me that because Jesus told his disciples to go buy a sword, you need to go buy a sword. And I am not going to tell you, you need to go out and buy a sword, because I think that was specific. It was considered a vertical truth. It was true at the time. It's not true now. And a couple of these you're familiar with. He told the disciples, when you go and you start at Jerusalem, and then you go to Judea, and then you go to Samaria, and then you go to the uttermost parts of the earth. Well, I've never been in any of those places, except this is the uttermost part of the earth, right? We've been at the uttermost part of the earth here. And you might say, well, they already did that, Jerusalem, and they already did Judea, and they already did Samaria, and now we're in the uttermost parts of the earth. And that's true. They did that, and we're not there. But we're not obeying the command of Jesus Christ that he gave to the disciples and the apostles, because none of us have started in Jerusalem. Another command he gave to the disciples, the apostles, was, do not go into the way of the Gentiles. And praise God, none of us are following that today, because we're all Gentiles. And we're going out into the way of the Gentiles. So that's just to sort of give you just a little bit to think about. But today I want to talk about the idea of horizontal truth. There is truth that is consistent from the beginning of creation, and it will be consistent to the end of creation. And maybe you can even say there's truth that is from eternity past to eternity future. So we're not going to talk about the love of God today, but the love of God, you could say, is an eternal truth. It was true in the past, in eternity past, before the creation of the heaven and the earth. And it will be true in eternity future. After this current heaven and earth is burned and a new heaven and a new earth is created, God is still going to be love. God was holy in the past. God is going to be holy in the future. And that is true today. God is love and God is holy. And so the horizontal truth that is consistent throughout time. So I'm just going to mention some of these. We'll see how far we get. I like the idea of where your heart is, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. Jesus said that when he was here on earth. And I think that's still true today. Where your treasure is, there your heart is also. And then, we say we're not under law today, right? I'm not under law, I'm under grace. I remember a song that we used to sing many years ago, and taken from the book of Romans, is it chapter 6? I'm not under law, I'm under grace. And yet, how did Jesus sum up the law? He summed it up when he said there's two great commandments. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. And the second commandment is like unto the first, love your neighbor as yourself. And then he said, the law is fulfilled in these two commandments. And if you think about the whole law of God, you could say that the law was detailed on how to love God and love your neighbor. And we say we're not under law, but we're still supposed to love God and we're supposed to love our neighbor. And then the idea of what does it take to please God? And hopefully we're all thinking of Hebrews chapter 11, verse 6, without faith, it is impossible to please God. And I think that's from Adam to the last human that ever lives on this earth, that's ever born on this earth, that will be true. Without faith, it's impossible to please God. And then, I don't want you to become too discouraged here, but when Jesus was here on earth, he said to his disciples, I'm going to send you forth as sheep among the wolves. And I think that's still true today, that God is sending us forth. We were talking in Sunday school about some of the persecution that's going on in the world. Maybe we mentioned it, I didn't remember. Even Nigeria, right? Nigeria, China, Vietnam, and some of those places. All of the persecution, North Korea, you can list them all. In America, persecution because we're believers and we're operating among the wolves. But the idea also, Jesus sends us forth as sheep among the wolves, but he sends us forth as a witness. So those are just a summary. We'll see how far we get today. Go back to where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. In Matthew chapter 6, we'll look at that. Matthew chapter 6. Some of these verses you sit there and you think, do we really want to read that verse? Verse 21. We'll start in verse 19. Do not lay up for yourselves treasure on earth, where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasure in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And if you were to go back to the beginning of chapter 5, where the Sermon on the Mount starts, he took the multitude up. The multitude was there, and he began to teach them. And so he's teaching the multitude. And maybe some of us want to say, well, whatever Jesus taught the multitudes, that's not for me today. Well, I challenge you, this is for you today. Where my treasure is, there my heart is going to be also. Where your treasure is, there your heart is going to be also. And so it causes us to think, okay, just where am I laying up my treasure today? And, we're all aware that none of us are supposed to just sit in our couch and wait for somebody to take care of us and say, well, I'm not going to lay up treasure for myself. That's not the idea. We're all supposed to eat, and we're all supposed to sleep, and we're all supposed to work, and we're all supposed to take care of our responsibilities and our families and whatever that is. But the idea, I think, is still, where is your treasure? Is your treasure your body? So I'm going to eat and I'm going to sleep. There, I mentioned, we won't talk about Steve today, but in Sunday school, he was reading ingredients, and Linda and I are saying, Steve, don't do that now. We're eating this cookie. Yeah, we're supposed to take care of my body, but my body is not my treasure. Somehow I have a body and I want to take care of the body, but I do it because my treasure is somehow laid up in heaven. And I want my body to be healthy so that I can serve the Lord. I want my business to be successful, not because my business is my treasure, but because I want to use my business to serve the Lord. And you can go on from there. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, I'll just read it here. Verse 18 says, brings out the idea of the temporal and the eternal. While we look not at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen, for the things which are seen are temporal, but the things which are not seen are eternal. Where is our treasure? Is our heart on the temporal, or is it on the eternal? And then in Colossians chapter 3 and verse 1, it says, if ye then be risen with Christ, seek those things which are above, where Christ sitteth on the right hand of God. Set your affection on things above, not on things of the earth, for you are dead, and your life is hid with Christ in God. If you're still there in the book of Matthew, you can go over to Mark chapter 12, and this is where Jesus is talking about the first and second commandment. Mark chapter 12. Jesus is talking to the scribes. Starts out in verse 28. One of the scribes came, and having heard them reasoning together, perceiving that he had answered them well, asked him, which is the first commandment of all? Verse 29, Jesus answered him, the first of all the commandments is, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul, with all your mind and with all your strength. This is the first commandment. And the second like it is this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these. And in Romans chapter 13, Paul says, owe no man anything but to love one another, for he that loveth another hath fulfilled the law. Love worketh no ill to his neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfilling of the law. And once again, you start talking about love. How do we love one another? How do you love your family? How do you love your friends? How do you love the community? How do you love the people you work with? And how often does that concept of love run through our mind as we go through the day? I was talking to someone a few weeks ago, you have this picture of the angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other shoulder, and both of them speaking into your ear, and one of them say, punch him, and the other one says, love him. And you sit there and how often do we love one another throughout the day? What does it mean to love one another? What kind of testimony are we leaving to those who are watching us? We're all familiar, but if you want to turn there, 1 Corinthians chapter 13. Some people refer to this as a love chapter. We'll just read the first 3 verses there, maybe. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I am become sounding brass or a clanging cymbal. Now, my understanding is some people like sounding brass and clanging cymbals, some of the music nowadays. Now, that's different than my taste. I don't like that. And though I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and though I have all faith so that I could remove mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. And though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor, and though I give my body to be burned and have not love, it profits me nothing. How do we love one another? The first and greatest commandment, to love the Lord thy God. True from the beginning of time, true until the end of time. Love God, love one another. And then the idea of faith. Let's go ahead and turn to Hebrews chapter 11. This is a powerful chapter also. Hopefully you have taken time to read through it, meditate upon it, but we're just going to focus on verse 6 for now. Without faith, it is impossible to please God. For he who comes to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. I didn't look up the idea of diligently there in the Greek, but at least in the English, you get this impression that this is heartfelt. This is important. This is something I have to do. I have to seek the Lord. And God is going to reward those who diligently seek him. The idea of faith. Some of you will remember the story of the Canaanite woman that came to Jesus, asking that Jesus would heal her daughter. And you sit there and Jesus, it says, didn't answer her. I don't know what Jesus was doing. You know, one time in John chapter, what is it? What chapter is it where he is writing on the ground? Is that chapter 8? Whatever. Anyway, you know, he was writing on the ground when the people came up and said, hey, this woman was taken in adultery. We should stone her. And Jesus was writing on the ground. No one knows what he wrote, but some people think he was writing the commandments, you know. You shall not commit adultery. And he said basically to the group, now, whoever's without sin, you cast the first stone. And it said they slowly just dissipated, you know, they just walked away. We don't know what Jesus was doing with the Canaanite woman either, but it's like he was not even going to answer her. She comes up and says, Lord, have mercy on me. My daughter is sick. And Jesus is just going about his business. And finally, the disciples are worried, said, Jesus, just tell her to leave. And Jesus says, I'm not sent but to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And the woman says, I know, Lord. But the dogs, you know, they get to eat the crumbs that fall off the master's table. Just give me a little bit, you know. And what did Jesus say? I didn't tell you where it was. Matthew chapter 15, verse 27. She says, truth, Lord, yet the dogs eat of the crumbs which fall from their master's table. Then Jesus answered and said to her, O woman, great is thy faith. Be it unto thee even as you will. And her daughter was made whole from that very hour. Great is your faith. What a powerful testimony. I know you can do this, Lord. I'm trusting in you. The same idea is found in Matthew chapter 8. Jesus is there with a crowd, and the centurion comes and says, my servant is lying sick at home. And Jesus said, now this time you sit there and wonder, now why is, one time Jesus is silent, one time Jesus is like, hey, great, I'll go with you. Let's go. I don't even know how long it would have taken him to get there. And the guy says, oh, no, Jesus, yeah, don't do that. Don't bother yourself. I don't want you to come to my house. says, I'm a centurion. I'm a man of position. I have people that are under me. And I say to my servant, you go do this, and he just does it. I say to this servant, you come here, he just does it. And in Matthew chapter 8, we'll go back to verse 8. The centurion answered him and said, Lord, I'm not worthy that you should come under my roof, but speak the word, and my servant shall be healed. In verse 9, he's talking about his authority. And in verse 10, Jesus, when he heard it, he marveled and said to them that followed, Verily I say to you, I have not found so great faith, not in Israel. And then in verse 13, Jesus said to the centurion, Go your way, and as you have believed, so it will be done unto you. And his servant was healed in that same hour. The power of faith. From the beginning of creation to the end of this earth and our life on this earth, God is pleased with faith. God requires faith. So there's been different people that have come up with acronyms of what faith stands for, F-A-I-T-H, for all, I trust him. Someone said faith is taking God at his word. We had the idea in Sunday school, God said it, I believe it, that settles it. And somebody said it doesn't matter whether you believe it or not. God said it, that settles it. And that's true, but what does my belief do for me? In these two instances, their faith did make a difference. They came to Jesus Christ, they called upon the Lord, and Jesus answered their prayer. Jesus answered their call. It does make a difference to me. It makes a difference to you whether we listen to God and obey him and have faith. So let me just throw this in real quick. The idea of faith is, you cannot say, well, I enrolled in the junior college by faith. And I'm going to say, what's the verse where God told you to enroll in the junior college? Oh, well, there's no verse. Yeah, okay. So faith is taking God at his word. So there's no verse about enrolling in junior college. There's no verse about who you're supposed to marry. There's no verse about, where you're supposed to get a job. But there is a verse that says, follow me. There is a verse that says, I am faithful. There is a verse that says, trust me. There is a verse that says, be an ambassador. There is a verse that says, teach what you have learned to other people. That's where faith comes in. What's my purpose for living? Not that I go to some place, not that I do a particular job, but my purpose for living is that I might be an ambassador for Jesus Christ, that I might be a teacher, that I might love one another, encourage one another, pray for one another. All of those are commands in the Bible. Then we can say, why are you praying for me? Well, because I believe what God says in his word. Pray one for another. And then we'll just mention when Nicodemus came to Jesus in verse 18 in John chapter 3, Jesus said, he that believeth on him is not condemned, but he that believeth not is condemned already, because he hath not believed in the name of the Son of God. And in verse 36, Jesus is saying to his disciples, he that believeth on the Son hath everlasting life, and that he that believeth not the Son shall not see life, but the wrath of God abideth on him. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. We're going to jump over the lambs among the wolves, the sheep among the wolves. but still that idea that God is sending us out. God is sending us out, and he tells us ahead of time, it's not going to be an easy road. There's going to be difficulties. There's going to be affliction. There's going to be tribulation. But still, I'm sending you out. And let's just spend a little time maybe on the idea of being a witness. Some of us are familiar with a group that's called Jehovah's Witnesses. And they go to the book of Isaiah, and in Isaiah 43 and verse 10 it says, "Ye are my witnesses, saith the Lord, and my servant whom I have chosen, that ye may know and believe me, and understand that I am he. Before me there was no God formed, neither shall there be after me." And of course we would say, well, this was spoken by God to Israel, the nation of Israel. Nation of Israel was God's witnesses. But Jesus used the same terminology when he was here on earth, and Paul uses the same terminology when he's writing his letters. We are still supposed to be witnesses of the things that we have seen, the things that we have heard, the things that we have experienced. John said in John chapter 1 and verse 7, "The same came for a witness, to bear witness of the light, that all men through him might believe." In John 15, Jesus said, "Ye also shall bear witness, because you have been with me from the beginning." Over and over, you have the idea of witness. When the Apostle Paul was still Saul, and he was struck down on the road to Damascus, and in Acts chapter 22, he's given his testimony. He talks about Ananias coming to him, and he said, "You are supposed to be a witness unto men, all men, of what you have seen and heard." And so in verse 16, Ananias says, "Rise and stand upon your feet. For I have appeared unto thee for this purpose, to make thee a minister and a witness, both of those things which you have seen and of those things in the which I will appear to you." Ananias is giving the words from God to Paul. Paul is still a witness of the things that he has seen and the things that he will see later on. And so I have this idea of, what's your story? And who are you telling your story to? Who do you have a relationship with that in such a way that they will listen to your story? They're intrigued by your story. They're intrigued by how you came to know Jesus Christ and what Jesus Christ has meant to you in the years since that time, and how Jesus Christ has led you and taught you and blessed you. Tell your story. And so in Mark chapter 5, some of you will remember when Jesus went to the one shoreline, and there was a demon-possessed man there. I mean, it said he was so demon-possessed that they couldn't even bind him with chains. He would just break the chains. And Jesus cast the demon out of him. And then the city came and they asked Jesus to leave because they didn't like the fact that they'd lost some of their business. And so when Jesus was getting ready to leave, this demon-possessed man that had been healed said, "Lord, I want to go with you." And Jesus said to him, "No, go home to your friends and tell them how great things the Lord has done for you and has had compassion on you." And I want to just challenge us, I guess, with that idea of telling our story. Go home to your friends. Go home to your family. Go home to your, fellow employers, fellow owners of businesses, whatever it might be, fellow farmers, fellow ranchers. Tell them how great things God has done for you. Horizontal truth. The love of God, the holiness of God, the faith necessary to please God, the commandments to love God and love your neighbor, The commandment, be a witness. What's our purpose in 2026? Well, there's probably a lot of different purposes that we can come up with throughout the year. But hopefully part of it is going to be, I want to tell my story to somebody else. I want them to hear what great things God has done for me. Amen.